You know, I've heard some pretty wild HOA stories over the years. Power trips over the color of a mailbox, neighbors up in arms about grass being a quarter-inch too long, all that petty stuff. But what happened to me? Man, this one takes the cake. I swear, it should be in a record book for sheer stupidity and overreach. My name's Arthur Jenkins, and the day they drained my lake, my beautiful, ancient, spring-fed lake, just to slap down a parking lot for their precious SUVs. Yeah, that's the day I realized just how far an HOA can go when the wrong guy's in charge. I bought my land about a decade ago, just outside a place called Willow Creek Estates, a development named for creeks that, ironically, they'd already buried in pipes to squeeze in more houses. But my little 5-acre slice was different. 3 sides untouched woodland, and the fourth brushed up against the edge of the new suburb. The centerpiece was my 2-acre lake, spring-fed, deep, crystal clear, ringed with old oaks and maples. I can still picture it. Evenings on my creaky dock, water glowing orange and purple, the slap of a fish, herons stalking frogs, the old-timer who sold me the place grinning as he told me it had been there since before his granddad's time. Me, that lake wasn't just water. It was a sanctuary. I'd swim on hot days, paddle around, or just let the world slip away. What I didn't realize at first was that my peace and quiet wouldn't last. Not with the HOA sniffing around, always hunting for problems to solve. The helm was Gerald Henderson. Picture a 50-something guy with 2 tight golf shirts, always red in the face, probably from yelling at the TV or losing at fantasy football. He cruised around in a spotless white Escalade. Never saw a speck of dirt on that thing. My first taste of Henderson's rule came in a letter. He didn't like the wild milkweed I let grow near the fence. Something about it looking unsightly from the HOA park. Never mind that I was raising monarch butterflies. I wrote him back, explained the whole butterfly thing. Big mistake. From then on, he decided I was the nail, and he was the hammer. Next came complaints about frogs croaking in my lake. Frogs, in a place called Willow Creek. Warnings about my compost bin, tucked 100 feet from anything HOA related. Every time, I'd check the county code, write a polite, factual reply, and watch his irritation build. You could tell he wasn't used to people standing their ground. Then, about 2 years ago, word started to spread. The HOA wanted more guest parking, and they were running out of places to put it. That's when Henderson's eyes landed on my lake, which he called an used open space. Suddenly, I got an official-looking engineering report in the mail. Said my lake was a flood risk. You know what I mean? This lake had survived a century of storms, but now, with all the new roofs and roads, it was public enemy number 1. The report, probably written by some firm on Henderson's speed dial, recommended draining the lake, grading the land, and, wouldn't you know it, building a community parking lot right there. My hands shook as I read it. That's when the gloves came off. Henderson had manufactured a crisis. He wanted my lake gone, not because of any risk, but because he needed space for his grand project. As a civil engineer who specializes in hydrology, reading their so-called expert report was almost funny. It was full of cherry-picked data, ignoring the fact that the lake prevented flooding by soaking up heavy rain and letting it seep out slowly. They even used a photo from a one-in-a-decade storm, showing the lake a few inches higher than usual as evidence of danger. The irony is, they planned to remove the very thing that kept the neighborhood dry. I pulled every map, survey, and rainfall record I could find, put together my own report. Real science, not make-believe. I showed how the lake kept the aquifer healthy, buffered storms, protected their homes. I showed up at the next HOA meeting, dropped my thick binder on the table, and calmly explained everything. Henderson just smiled and said, "Thanks for your input, Mr. Jenkins. We have our own experts." Next topic. I got myself a lawyer, good guy, Bill, who told me straight. HOAs are tough. Their rules give them a scary amount of power. Unless I could prove outright malice or gross negligence, I'd probably lose in court. They sent me a notice, 30 days until they started draining the lake, citing community safety. Henderson hosted meetings, waving around blueprints for Henderson Plaza, a sea of blacktop with little islands of shrubs. He painted me as the selfish loner, holding the community hostage. Some neighbors bought it, others kept quiet. The HOA voted to move forward. I'll never forget the day the trucks arrived. Excavators, bulldozers, massive pumps. Henderson was there, waving his hard hat, looking like Napoleon after a discount sale. I tried everything, talked to the crew, showed them my deed, but the foreman just shrugged and pointed at Henderson. 2 days later, my lake was gone, replaced by a muddy, lifeless wound. The silence that followed was almost physical, a gut punch every time I looked out my window. A week later, they rolled in the asphalt, steam billowing in the air. Ancient oaks were felled, hauled away. They painted crisp white lines, parking spots where the water used to glow at sunset. Henderson put up a sign with his name on it. I stood at the edge of that black, soulless rectangle, hands shaking, something inside me hardening. I was done playing nice. You see, water doesn't just disappear because someone in a golf shirt says so. Water remembers. And I remembered, too. The new parking lot was 2 acres of impermeable asphalt. No more slow soak. Rain would just rush off, straight downhill, right into the lower parts of Willow Creek Estates, including Henderson's prized lawn. My property, still mostly untouched, was higher ground. I started to plan. I built rain gardens and bioswales along my border with the parking lot, beautiful beds of native plants to soak up runoff. But I designed them with a little secret. They'd hold up fine during a normal shower, but during a real storm, they'd overflow, sending the water exactly where nature intended, right along the ancient swales, straight toward the houses below. The first fall, people noticed musty smells in their basements. The next big rain, I heard stories about sump pumps running all night, lawns turning to marsh. Henderson's rose garden wilted, his driveway cracked. Puddles formed on the parking lot, mosquitoes breeding where fish once swam. But still, Henderson refused to see it. Spring brought the real show, days of rain, and suddenly, basements flooded, lawns became bogs. The HOA brought in new experts. This time, they couldn't fudge the facts. The removal of the lake had wrecked the local water table. Their fix? Hundreds of thousands in new drains, pumps, and endless repairs. Special assessments broke the residents' patience. Henderson's legacy was a parking lot nobody wanted to use in a neighborhood that was half swamped. The final, furious HOA meeting. With people screaming for his head, Henderson resigned, white as a sheet. I started building small ponds and wetlands on my land. A new sanctuary, alive with frogs and birds. Henderson moved away. His house sold for pennies on the dollar. My old lake site stood as a reminder. You can pave over nature for a while, but sooner or later, the water always comes back. So what do you think? Did I do the right thing? Has your HOA ever tried to pull something like this? Drop a comment, because, believe me, I know what it's like when people in power forget that nature always bats last.